Good afternoon in the UK, good morning in Brazil. Welcome to the Low Carbon Maritime Navigation and Ports webinar brought to us by DIT, the Department for International Trade. My name is Luis de Matos. I'm the CEO of RBNA Consult, and it is an honor to be the chairman of such an important event with such a relevant subject. The official estimate is that around 2 to 3% of global CO2 emissions come from shipping, and it is estimated that they continue to grow by 4% each year. With increasing pressures from society, the shipping industry is rethinking how it can move thousands of tons of cargo across the oceans without increasing global emissions. And like many climate change solutions, the answer lies in adopting a combination of new measures and technologies. So the DIT brought us here today several authorities on the subject, British and Brazilian, to share with us the advances in the contribution of the naval industry, the shipping industry, in the fight against global warming. Our webinar today has simultaneous translation available in Portuguese and English. And to access the desired language, select the interpretation option at the bottom of the app. Before we get started, DIT would like to thank the Brazilian Cabotage Association, ABAC, the UK Export Finance, UKEF, Maritime UK, the Society of Maritime Industry, SMI, Connected Place Catapult, the Brazilian Marine Engineering Society, SOBENA, the Rio de Janeiro's Naval Technological Cluster, the Brazilian Nautical Association, ACATMAR, the Nautical GT of the government of Santa Catarina, and the Brazilian Machinery Association, ABMAC, and of course all the partners who worked in the organization. Questions can be asked via the Q&A question answers, which appears below the transmission screen. I'm going to take the questions and direct them to the speaker. At the end of each panel, each speaker will be invited to take their place on the virtual stage. Speakers can keep the cameras on at all times and just mute the microphone. For the opening remarks, I would like to invite Martin Wally. Martin is the Director of Trade and Investment Brazil and Foreign Direct Investment, FDI, for Latin America and Caribbean. And he is the British Consulate in São Paulo. Martin started his role in July 2019, and he has worked for the UK government for 11 years now. His last role was a Deputy Consul General in Chicago, USA. He's on his second posting in Brazil and was previously posted in São Paulo between 2010 and 2014. And prior to joining the Foreign Office, he worked in the private sector in the UK and Italy. And we'll have also Tom Shant, the CEO of Society of Marine Industry. Tom has a long association with the marine industry, having been an active sailor and student of boat building in Southampton. Recent career experience included a distributor management for a marine equipment company before he joined SMI in February 2017 as the Business Development Director and Secretary to the Commercial Marine Group and Marine Science and Technology Group. Tom was appointed Chief Executive of the SMI in August 2020. Tom could not be present live, but he uploaded a video for us. So now I would like to invite Martin to come forward and give your speech. Please, Martin, welcome.
Luis, thank you. Good morning. Hi, bom dia to everyone in Brazil and boa tarde to everybody in the UK. Welcome to this event on a really important subject of low carbon maritime transport and how we can go about reducing the carbon emissions of the maritime industry. So as Luis says, I'm Martin. I'm the Director for Trade and Investment at the British Consulate in Sao Paulo. And the team which I'm part of has three key objectives. One of them is to help the British companies find success in Brazil. The second objective is to help Brazilian companies succeed in the UK. And the third objective is to improve the business environment between our two countries so that doing trade between Brazil and the UK is easier and more efficient. Besides all of that, we're also committed to ensuring that our work in improving the economic connection between Brazil and the UK also helps our two countries transition to net zero emissions through clean growth technologies. So this event ticks all of those boxes, and I'm delighted to welcome you to discuss decarbonisation with some excellent speakers today during different panels. So the maritime sector, as we describe it, includes a really massive and important part of our economy in both Brazil and the UK. And when we talk about maritime, we include everything from the ports themselves to shipbuilding, ship maintenance, servicing of offshore platforms and offshore wind turbines, marine technologies, and much more besides. So it's a vital part of the economy. And in the UK, as an island nation, we have a long tradition and a proud tradition of seafaring for all sorts of purposes, for travel, for trade, for military purposes. And as kids in the UK, we grow up with stories of seafaring exploits, from things such as the Spanish Armada to the engineering exploits of Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who designed world-changing ships such as the SS Great Britain, the first iron steamer to cross the Atlantic. And famously, the British shipping industry played its part in a significant chapter in Brazil's history when the Royal Navy escorted the Portuguese royal family from Lisbon to Rio de Janeiro to escape Napoleon's troops. And our long tradition of maritime history mixes with cutting-edge technology in the UK, making the UK a leader today in maritime expertise. And in the UK, the maritime industry is worth £30 billion per year to our economy and employs over 700,000 people, many of them in really highly skilled roles. Of course, here in Brazil, the sector is also massively important, with one of the world's longest coastlines and a world hungry for quality and sustainable Brazilian products. The maritime sector is vital to Brazil's prosperity. And as these sectors grow in both the UK and Brazil over the next few years, there will be increased pressure to reduce the carbon intensity of this sector and for us to invest in clean maritime technology. And we hope that this event today will highlight some of those opportunities which could come from Brazil and the UK working together and sharing best practice in this sector. And we hope that the event will generate some conversations and generate some connections which will bring together our maritime sectors, bringing them more closely together. In terms of emission reductions, the UK was the first country in the world to commit to achieving net zero emissions by 2050, and reducing emissions for the maritime sector is a really vital part of this. And the UK government set out its plan to achieve that in a clean maritime plan, which was produced a couple of years ago. Achieving this target will not be easy. It will involve a complete transformation of the shipping industry, as well as port infrastructure. And the plan has different goals, of course, by reducing emissions over the entire length of the plan, but has interim goals, for example, including ambitious goals such as having zero carbon emission vehicles, commercial vehicles, in operation by 2025. The Clean Maritime Plan also builds on the UK's existing expertise in green maritime solutions and port management, and the policy incentives are designed to spur innovation in decarbonisation of marine operations. And our ambition is this plan will continue to position the UK as a leading supplier of zero and low emission shipping technology, as well as green maritime finance. There's a range of technologies and fuels which will play their part in this transition to zero emission. And those some examples include green hydrogen, ammonia, biofuels, electric propulsion, scrubbers, cold ironing, solar power, and much more. As the UK government, we're really keen to work closely with Brazil on the greening of this sector. We think that UK companies will be able to help Brazilian maritime operations become greener faster, and we're sure that the UK has a lot to learn from Brazil as well. So I'd like to just thank the expert speakers who will join us today for today's session, and also thank the British government's maritime and infrastructure teams here in Brazil who had the idea of setting up this event and organize this event. They are based in the British consulates in Sao Paulo and in Rio. And please do contact them for any more information on the issues we'll cover today, or any more information for doing business in Brazil if you're a British company, and they would be delighted to help. So I wish you all an informative and productive event, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you for the opening. As you put it right, I think UK and Brazil can collaborate a lot in a market not only aligned with the ESG agenda, but with an enormous commercial potential. I would invite everybody now to watch Tom's video for his opening remarks. So if we can have Tom uploaded the video now.
Welcome to the Ports and Maritime Green Transition event. My name is Tom Chant and I'm the Chief Executive of the Society of Maritime Industries, the trade association for the maritime engineering sector in the UK. I'm delighted to be able to just say a few words to support and open the event today. I'm lucky to have spent a few wonderful weeks in Brazil. One particularly brilliant trip was a trip in a taxi down the coast from Rio to Sao Paulo, and then on to Florianopolis by plane, all in 1 week. I saw the country, the coastline, and the industry that both supports the maritime industry and also, of course, contributes to the overall environmental issues we have today. Today, we all have an enormous opportunity to become both greener and smarter about maritime, but at the same time, we should all see it as an incredible business opportunity at our fingertips. The investment needed to decarbonise maritime runs into the trillions of dollars, and there will be winners and losers in the coming years. I don't know if you can remember the battle between VHS and Betamax videotapes, but the maritime options are vastly more complex. Your vessel type, route, cargo, bunkering, port capabilities, engineering staff capabilities will all need to be taken into consideration before choosing a solution. This means more than ever that we need these types of conversations that we're doing today and collaboration. With the pandemic, we've lost the face-to-face opportunities from conferences and exhibitions, but we have gained this type of brilliant opportunity to connect and collaborate. As drivers of local and global ports represent a hugely significant opportunity. And whether it is developing or upgrading infrastructure and systems, there is a need for efficiency and excellence at the core of how all ports operate. With challenges to consider ranging from geography, hydrography, economics, and even politics, it is no easy undertaking to design, build, and operate a port without collaboration with experts, and that task is only made more difficult by adding in decarbonisation as well. You'll hear from a variety of speakers today about programmes and innovation in the UK. And I know the team at the Department for International Trade and us at SMI are always happy to help with connections and collaboration. UK companies work around the world, they're great exporters, they know how to do it, and your issues and your opportunities won't be unique to you. Please do reach out to us. We're really happy to help and get those connections going. It's what we do. So I look forward to some connections coming out of today. Have a great event and hopefully we'll connect soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, very nice. So we go now for our first panel. It's about green ports and navigation, current scenario and trends. And our first speaker will be Jean-David Capras. Jean-David is the editor-in-chief of the Marine System and Ocean Technology Journal. It's a Sobena scientific technical journal. Jean holds a master in industrial engineering and a PhD in applied science from the University of Liège, also obtained in Belgium. He is the head of the Ocean Engineering Department at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, where he is a professor. He was a technical director of the Brazilian Society of Marine Engineering, Sobena, from 2017 to 2020. He has been the editor-in-chief of the journal Marine System and Ocean Technology, MSOT, since 2019, and he's a good friend of mine. So, Jean, please go ahead.
Thank you, Luis, for this kind introduction. I will share my slides for the next 10 minutes. I plan to speak about a really interesting topic. I would like to shortly introduce the context of low carbon maritime navigation and ports and give you a really short overview on several Brazilian academic studies that has been developed recently. First, before to start, I would like to give you the size of the problem. As you probably know, world commercial fleet is growing by approximately 3% per year, and it is correspond to today about 100,000 big size vessels traveling over the oceans. Ship work, which is the distance traveled by ships multiplied by the payload, almost double in only 10 years. However, shipping corresponds to around 3.5 to 4% of overall GHG emissions today. This is half of the livestock, if you want a comparison. Anyway, in order to comply with the Paris Agreement to climate change, there are actions that should be developed, and this is where the IMO strategies come from. So you can see an important slide with the IMO strategies to reduce the GHG emissions. Horizontally, you have years. Vertically, you have the GHG emissions. And at the right side, you can see that the minimum expectation of IMO is to reduce of at least 50% of the emissions in comparison to 2008 by 2050, and of course, if more, better. In order to achieve this goal, the IMO developed several rules and started in 2015 by the deployment of two measures, one which is design and technical measure through the Energy Efficiency Design Index, AEDI, and through an operational measure in orange here, which is the Energy Efficient Management Plan. However, that measures are not enough to comply the goals, so IMO discussed and approved at the beginning of this year what's called short-term measures in purple in this slide. That two short-term measures are going to be or enter into force in 2023 and consist of an extension of ADI to the existing ships, and also you have an application of a new operational index called Carbon Intensity Index, and I will speak about it on the next slide. In parallel to that measures, you have what we call research measure and long-term measures in green in this slide, and this is the only way to reach the objectives of IMO for 2050. It relies on mainly on innovative and alternative fuels for maritime industry, as well as in innovative technologies. Finally, in that portion, we have also what we call market-based measures. They are basically taxes that are going to be applied on the purchase of fuels. In regards to CII, Carbon Intensity Index, this is an important operational index that are going to enter into force in 2023. And as you can see on that slide, IMO plan to classify on a yearly basis the fleet of each ship in 5 categories: A for a really good energy efficient ships, and E for really bad energy efficiency ships. Of course, what we can ask is, well, if you not comply with the rule, what are your options? And basically, we can define 4 families of options. The first one is what we call energy-saving technologies. It comes from really simple solutions such as propeller polishing, brushing, cleaning, to more complex solutions such as advanced electronic control system for ship engines, or in yellow here, air lubrication systems. I highlighted this one because the Vale mining company, Brazilian mining company, just applied this technology on one of their ships. The second family relies on renewable energies, and it's principally consider the involvement of wind energies with the installation of sails, wings, and eventually flattener rotors. And I am sure that the next speaker from International Windship Association will speak about that topic. Next, it's the family of applying and the new fuels or alternative fuels, such as hydrogen, ammonia, biofuels, LNG, and so on. One of the key consideration and discussion that is currently happening in the Marine Environment Protection Committee at IMO is how to consider the emission from well to tank, the emissions that are created locally to produce that alternative fuels. This is a critical point that is actually discussed in IMO. Last but not least, of course, if the operator doesn't have enough money to invest in new technology, the last and default solution will be to reduce the speed of the ship, and by then, of course, reducing the emissions. I doesn't list here solutions for ports, but it's we can just mention some of them, or at least 2. Cold ironing is a really promising solution to reduce the emission when the ship is at the dock, and virtual arrival is another very interesting solution when we consider the intentional reduction of speed of the ship when there is no slot available at the port terminal. My last slide concerned a short overview of some contribution of academic teams from Brazil to this topic. And all the contribution are going to the same direction and towards the integrated assessment model developments. We, as in the past, some good studies to perform inventories of GHG locally in regional port, or in Santos port in São Paulo, or at the level of the country. And finally, also at the international level, as the USP University has been involved in the IMO consortium for the first GHG inventory study. And I have been personally involved in that study as an independent expert. Then we can see that we have already published, and there are some work actually undergoing on the development of models to assess the positive or negative impacts of IMO policies on the global maritime transport costs, and also on the global economy through the assessment of the GDP changes in regards of application of the new policies. This kind of mathematical model is really important to choose the best policy and avoid as much as possible strong drawbacks, for instance, in the next futures. We can also finally mention some interesting studies of a group of colleagues that are working on comparing innovative fuels in terms of impacts on economy, but also, of course, on impacts for GHG emissions. Finally, I would like to give you some points to take away. So we can say that there are some Brazilian research teams, many UFRJ and USP, that has developed and are currently developing consistent contribution to that matter. And finally, I would like to leave you 3 challenges that we are going or trying to answer in the next years. First is we would like to better understand of the well-to-tank problem and how the production of innovative or alternative fuels may affect local emissions. The second one is we would like to check that the proposed IMO policies will not have a rebound effect. By rebound effect, we mean the increase of national emissions. And finally, we are studying some solutions to provide tools for ship owners, ship operators, port operators to choose the best solution for their fleets or for their terminals. So this was my presentation. Thank you very much, and I will be happy to share our works with you if you have interest.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to know that there is a lot of R&D going on, both in the UFRJ and the USP. And I just want to remind everyone that you can put all your questions on the chat, and we'll have, like, at the end of this session, all the speakers to answer all your questions. And now I would like to invite Gavin Allwright, the Secretary General of the International Windship Association, IWSA. Alongside his work as an association secretary, he also leads the policy work stream requiring regular attendance at IMO, OECD, or CDE in Portuguese, and EU meetings, and sits on the Stakeholders Advisory Committee for the NTCC network at the International Maritime Organization, the IMO. His work extends to being a non-executive board member for the World Wind Energy Association, the WEA, a work package leader on the EU Integrated Wind Assist Ship Propulsion, WASP, and advisor on various shipping decarbonization projects. He is also a regular guest lecturer in the UN World Maritime University in Malmö, Sweden, among other universities. Gavin will first present us a video, and then we'll be live to talk with us. So if the organization could put the video on first, and then we'll have Gavin with us here.
Hello, my name's Gavin Allwright, and I'm the Secretary General of the International Windship Association. And today I'm going to give you a broad overview of the developments within the wind propulsion segment. And I'd first like to welcome you to the decade of wind propulsion. This was a campaign that we launched at the beginning of the year, and really around the delivery of wind propulsion and the potential that wind propulsion has within the shipping industry. So firstly, just to give you a broad idea about the IWSA itself, we have over 130 active members around the world. As you see, many of them are clustered in Europe currently, but we're seeing growth in other areas of the world as well. And that's grown quite quickly over the last 7 years since its founding back in 2014. And as an association, or as a trade association, we do a lot of work around the communication of wind propulsion activities, promotion of the benefits of wind propulsion, of course, also helping to facilitate that through standards, policy work, etc. Now, what are we actually talking about when we're talking about wind propulsion? Well, we're talking about the direct application of wind power. So there's no translation of that into a fuel or a stored renewable energy source. It's a primary renewable source. So basically the energy is delivered to the vessel at the point of use, is harvested by the technologies on board, and of course doesn't require any infrastructure. There's an abundant energy source that's available around the world, and it's available today. And the levels of the potential of wind propulsion for delivering of power to ships. When we look at a retrofit, we're looking at around about 5 to 20% of the propulsive energy to a vessel. That's remembering with no changes to the operational profile. So pretty much a ship being run as a motor vessel with a couple of wind propulsion systems added to that would deliver 5 to 20% of that propulsive force, with the potential to actually optimize that out to 30%, especially once you start making changes for speed or routing, etc. Then that optimization can get some pretty good numbers. Now, for an optimized new build of a vessel, then we're looking at the potential for 50% plus as a primary wind option. And there are an increasing number of projects out there that are looking at that primary wind option. Now, just very quickly to let you know regarding the types of technologies, there's actually seven groups of this technology, from hard sail and soft sail, which most people are most aware of, through rotors, which are actually a cylinder that rotates, and as the wind hits it, it creates a differential of pressure on either side of the spinning object called the Magnus effect, and that creates thrust. Quite often those spinning cylinders are seen and thought to be generators. Actually, they use a small amount of electrical power to generate a far larger amount of thrust. Then we have kites, which are making a comeback into the industry. About 15 years ago, we saw some initial installations. Now we're seeing some new installations coming through, and a suction wing system, which is a rigid wing built with holes in the wing, and a suction device like a fan that helps to suck in the boundary layer around the wing, creating thrust, increased thrust. And there's also potential for turbines, and even for the hull to be designed something like a wing sail to create thrust forward. Now we look at these in a fairly holistic way. So if we're plugging wind propulsion into the decarbonization matrix, then a lot of the issues or a lot of the challenges around decarbonizing shipping start to get solved. So if we see wind in a conservative way as being able to deliver 20% of the propulsive energy across the fleet this decade, for example, then if we link that up with operational optimization, so some of this would increase the amount of wind power that is delivered, for example, with weather routing for wind. When you reduce speed, you actually increase the percentage potential for wind as well. But all of these other operational optimizations, probably looking at another 20% either reduced or optimized through the wind. And then with the vessel optimization, then we start to see another 20%. This is around energy efficiency measures, better design, better integration into energy management systems, etc. Now, if we add those three together, then we're looking at around about 60% of the propulsive energy requirement being covered by those three segments, leaving at best or at the height around 40% actually for the eco-fuels element of this, thus reducing the amount of eco-fuel or the pressure to supply so much eco-fuel to the fleet, therefore actually accelerating accelerating and also reducing the cost of actually decarbonizing the fleet here. Now, I've talked about where wind propulsion fits into that decarbonization. Where are we today? Well, we have 15 large ocean-going vessels in operation with wind assist systems, and over the next one or two quarters, we will see an additional 2 or 3 vessels. So by the end of this year, this number should go up to 17, possibly 18 vessels. Into Q1, we're hoping to see 20 vessels outfitted by the end of Q1 next year, and plus 1 wind-ready vessel, and quite a wide selection of smaller sail cargo vessels, fishery vessels, etc., etc. So these cover all of the major ship types except for container ships at present. Now, container ships obviously are not one of the lower hanging fruit for wind propulsion, because deck space is of a high premium. However, for example, kites, which are off deck systems, will certainly be applicable to container vessels, and we're seeing designs coming through for new build container vessels that have wind propulsion integrated into the very design, so can minimize the reduction of space, also the space required, and also maximize the potential power delivery for that as well. And going forward, market forecasts, we tend to rely on third-party market forecasts rather than our internal ones. But what we're seeing is probably by the end of 2022, probably Q1 into 2023, just because of some of the delays through COVID, etc. Doubling the number that I talked about before, so that if we've got around 20 installations by the end of Q1 2022, by the end of Q1 2023, we'll be looking at doubling that again. So we're on quite a good trajectory there, plus some additional smaller vessels being brought in there, and a fairly robust pipeline of projects going through as well. So there's also a very robust R&D pipeline with about 30 plus additional technologies and projects under development worldwide. Now, as I mentioned, but with third-party forecasts, 2030, an EU report that was made a few years ago forecast out wind propulsion to be up to 10,700 installed systems by 2030. So that's approximately 15% of the fleet, but that report primarily looked at tankers and bulkers, but also container ships at that point, but didn't bring kites into that analysis. So we think that could be quite conservative, but also the policy drivers of even an initial strategy from the IMO wasn't there when these calculations were made. But anyway, a significant amount or a significant market penetration there. By the 2050s, the UK government Clean Maritime Plan back in July 2019, the research around there actually focused on or identified up to 40,000 vessels, which is around about 45% of the global fleet, having some form of wind propulsion system on board those, or installed on board by the 2050s. Again, we think that's conservative. However, even at this level, that's a substantial number of vessels, both retrofitted, but even we would expect by the 2050s, the vast majority of these to be new builds. So that's a significant development. Now, on a final macro sense, I'd just like to give you this this shipping decarbonization. How could wind propulsion actually be one of the real catalysts for decarbonization? And of course, you get the decarbonization strictly from the wind propulsion itself, which is significant. But also, if we look at this, one of the dynamics that wind propulsion brings is it's a free energy source. Of course, the technology it has to be paid for. It can be paid for either as a capex or more effectively as a leased system, for example, or wind as a service, being sold as a service. So shifting that capex onto the opex. Anyhow, once if we did a significant rollout of wind propulsion across the fleet in this decade, looking at sort of penetration levels up to 100%, then actually we start saving a huge amount of money from the alternative fuels and more expensive carbon fuels with carbon taxes, etc., being added to that. Enough to actually by the 2050s, having covered the cost of at least IMO 2050. So the cost of 50% decarbonisation could be covered simply by bringing wind propulsion in this decade, but significantly actually even higher than that, and the potential for it to cover the entire cost of decarbonisation, which has been estimated between about 1.4 and 1.9 trillion. That is possible to do. It's possible to offset that cost solely by bringing the wind propulsion systems to the heart of the decarbonisation approaches. So this is, of course, on a macro sense. It's not going to be the case ship by ship or fleet by fleet, but as an overview, this can really change the dynamic and actually simply decarbonize the fleet with a minimum of cost. And frankly, we call that a win-win-win situation. And this slide, I hope will bring to the center, or bring to your mind, that all of these companies are engaged with wind propulsion, either in development of systems, in verification of systems, installed systems, or working on vessels for the future. And I think you'll see that while wind propulsion isn't quite center, if you like, center stage or a mainstream technology choice just yet, that a large number of mainstream players are actually engaged with wind propulsion, and we're seeing that movement now, the maturing of these technologies, where we will see that it will be mainstream within the next couple of years. So with that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. And if you have any questions, then I can answer those, or you can send those to me at at secretary@windship.org. Thank you very much.
That was a very nice video from Gavin, but now we'll have him live with us. So Gavin, please come forward to say some few words.
Hello, can you hear me?
There you are. Welcome.
Thank you, Luis. My apologies. I'm just recovering from COVID, so the recording was a little bit better than my rather coughing live performance.
They took me out. I'm back now. Well, Gavin, yeah, so if you we'll have some question and answers at the end of the panel with the other speakers. But if you want to add something to your presentation now, or you rather wait for the debate at the end, as you please.
Yeah, no, I'll just maybe mention a couple of small things. One is that we're just awaiting the last stages of our confirmation, IWSA's confirmation for consultative status at IMO. So that should be confirmed next week, which is an excellent development for the association. A couple of other things. Actually, at MEPC last week, we had a circular which covered wind propulsion being accepted. which upgrades all of the assessments around EEDI and EEXI for wind propulsion technologies. So there's a distinct maturing of the regulatory framework around wind propulsion and the acceptance of that within the industry. And the final thing is on I'm sure many of the people watching this will have seen that Vale is included in that final slide. And actually, there was a picture of the Seezalsham, which is chartered by Vale, with 5 Flettner rotor installations. And that's actually the largest vessel under wind assist at present. So we have a VLCC out of there. We will have a second one next year. But this VLOC, which is 325,000 deadweight tons, with 5 Flettner rotors installed, and those are hinged, providing probably between 8 to 10% on that vessel. It's a really exciting development. And actually, Vale, the project won one of our innovation awards a couple of weeks ago at COP26. So they were delighted with that as well. So Brazil does certainly stand at a point where one of its leading companies, is one of the forerunners in wind propulsion at present. And on the UK side of things, obviously we're an international association, but there are about 6 or 7 leading UK companies that are developing these technologies. Europe is definitely a center at the moment for the technology development. The UK is one of 3 or 4 countries that are pioneering these systems. So it's a really exciting time, and a really exciting time to engage with a new technology coming through.
Yes, very nice. A lot of things going on. I think it's an exciting time for research, and and it's good to know that Vale is seeking to be part of the solution. So those are very good news. So what I'll do is, I'll invite you to go backstage with Jean-David, and you guys stay with your camera on because we'll call you back at any time. But now I will invite here Mr. Thomas White. Tom leads the Maritime and Ports Strategy and Connected Places Catapult, with a focus on digitalization and decarbonization initiatives, working with the public sector, academia, and industry partners, including recent successful projects in the Department for Transport Clean Maritime Demonstrator Program. Tom has experience across the maritime, defense, manufacturing, and engineering sectors through previous positions at Rolls-Royce and Lloyd Rested in innovation, clean maritime, material science, autonomous ships, cybersecurity, and digital twins analytics for connected assets. Tom is a member of the Institute of Engineering and Technology and holds a bachelor degrees in environment. So, Tom, please, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Can you hear me, Lewis?
Yes, very clear. Thank you.
Lovely. And my slide should just be loading now. Perfect. I think we can see those. So, yes, thank you very much, Lewis, and good morning, everyone. It's really wonderful to join so many fantastic speakers today to work together on some of the most pressing issues for our industry. So, as Lewis mentioned, I'm Tom White. I lead the Maritime and Ports activity at the Connected Places Catapult, and I will briefly this morning talk you through some of our most recent work with UK ports on decarbonisation initiatives, which actually is not just about the ports in themselves, but very much about the wider context of how the maritime sector has impacts well beyond the ports. So due to time, the next few slides I'll just flash up briefly, but I'm sure these will be shared afterwards for some added context. So just to say at this point, the Catapult, we're a UK government-backed innovation organisation that works towards market making and disruption by increasing the supply of innovative products into the marketplace, as well boosting market demand for innovation. And if you'd like to know more on the ways we do that, please do get in touch after the event. And I've included this slide just to briefly mention to our vision for the future port as a multi-systems, cross-sector hub of innovation, noting some of the themes on here, such as multimodal decarbonisation, that I will mention to in a moment. So, and just as well, that we'll share afterwards a brief timeline of our activity over the past 18 months. But today, really, I'd just like to share a few projects relevant to clean maritime, and all of these are part of the UK Clean Maritime Demonstrator Programme as part of the Clean Maritime Plan, led by the Department of Transport in partnership with Innovate UK, with specifically our projects working towards green ports. And a key concept we've been working on here at the Catapult is, and with our partners, is how we transition ports from the multimodal transport hubs of today to the multimodal energy hubs of the future. And that, when we consider the immense challenges across sectors in decarbonisation, ports have a real potential to accelerate multimodal solutions, drive regional regeneration in coastal communities, and demonstrate and build confidence in whole future energy systems that we can then scale outward. And one project we are currently delivering together with the Port of Tyne in the UK is looking at how we actually build on ports' unique geographic position and potential to access multiple renewable energy sources, for example, in offshore and onshore wind, solar, tidal, wave, and more. And our project with Tyne is really about how you develop what I call as the digital glue that sits in the middle of that supply and demand that predicts and balances across multiple renewable energy vectors to multiple waterborne and land transport use cases. For example, in how we use a renewables mix at ports to provide clean shore power, to provide on-site hydrogen electrolysis, charging infrastructure, for example, for mobile forklifts. Another project we're working on is with Teesport in the UK to develop a smart port energy system that includes predictive maintenance capability. And this is all about working across multiple use cases to understand the resilience of critical energy infrastructure, working with GE, Teesside University, and PD Ports, we're looking to trial this system next year, delivering that digital twin of port energy infrastructure that considers supply and integrity of future energy systems. One other project we have going on in the UK is at Portsmouth International Port, where we're actually deploying today and trialing a modular hydrogen electrolyzer at the port and retrofitting a service vessel to run on hydrogen as a fuel. But as well as that, we're carrying out research into other potential hydrogen users at the port, such as hydrogen heavy goods vehicles looking to refuel and hydrogen future buses in the city. And this is all with the purpose of actually de-risking investment in future energy infrastructure whilst some clarity remains on certain modes, for example, in the future of international shipping. And to support this work, we'll be developing a proof of concept of a digital twin that provides a predictive model of multimodal hydrogen demand and production capacity at the port through the modular system. And that model will also be looking at the port energy uses across the estate and where we might be sourcing that energy from. And working together with our partners at Portsmouth University, Brighton University, NGAS, IOTICS, we'll also be working with Lloyd's Register to look into the safety and regulatory considerations relating to the safe generation, storage and distribution of hydrogen in a built-up port community. And the last project I'll share today to mention is our work with Aberdeen Harbour, where we'll be doing two things. And first is by working together with Bureau Happold Engineering to create the detailed design plans for shore power installation that will connect to offshore service vessels. But also we're looking at the potential that decarbonisation initiatives through ports have from a place-based perspective in in terms of supporting regional decarbonisation and connecting with supporting initiatives such as zero carbon public transport and research objectives in the region. And just to mention as well as I close on what is a fairly short tour of some activity, that whilst it has been a busy year for us, I really feel that our work is just getting started, and that we are really just starting to open up the incredible opportunities that our journey to a zero carbon future offers us. And throughout history, we know it's been those that are willing to embrace change that have succeeded and persisted through the ages. When we think about the first ocean-going explorers to the first steel ship, the first transatlantic Atlantic crossing done solely under steam power, and now with our transition to a greener, more equitable future, which we'll continue working on across multiple themes over the coming months and years. So please do get in touch if you want to find out any more about these projects that I've mentioned too, how the Catapult can work with you or on our future work. And very much look forward to the discussion, hearing more through the rest of the session and connecting after the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Very nice presentation. I think it was very clear. And what I would like to do now is to invite all the speakers to the stage, and we can we're missing Tom. Well, Tom will be with us soon. There he is. And we're a little bit short of time. So what we'll do, I mean, we have one question for each of you, that we took from the audience. And so I will kindly ask you to be very very fast in your answer. But anyway, your email are available, and you can always, to the audience, you can always contact DIT and they can direct the question to the speakers. So if we go to the first question here, let me open it here from the first one is for you, Jean, from Flavia Silva de Castro, from the UK government. Jean, what could be done in Brazil to encourage the use of innovative decarbonization technologies? I mean, could you explain a little bit, go a little bit further on this subject?
Thanks for the question. I strongly believe that teaching and changing a little bit the way we are teaching in the universities, abording these new technologies and probably also explaining better the challenges for the next future. It's one way to consider. Also, of course, we are active through various societies such as Sorbena to promote these new technologies in Brazil, and it's why I am here today.
Very good, Jean. So we have the next question here to Gavin. Let me just read it here for you. Gavin is from Leonardo Steiner. He would like to know how you see the recent developments at the COP26, COP26 in regards to shipping. What can we expect from more urgent actions in the near future? If you could elaborate a little bit on this. That's a hot subject. I think you're on mute, Gavin.
Sorry, I have a problem. Okay, there we go. Somebody unmuted me for me. There's some reason my mouse isn't working. Yes, COP26. Yeah, I was there for just over a week, and some interesting developments there, especially in the push for zero emissions shipping, as opposed to net zero emission shipping, which was quite intriguing. I think that the calls in COP26 and the for example, the green routes that are being proposed is a very interesting area of development, and I can see that those could certainly develop the infrastructure for the delivery of zero emissions fuels. I think that the pressure that was brought to bear in COP26 hasn't necessarily translated into MEPC and into the IMO yet. So I think that there's a lot of ambition, there's a lot of talk, there was a lot of positivity around the delivery of fuels in the mid to long term. But I also think that we have to have a stronger focus on technologies and operational changes that are available today and that can deliver substantial reductions today. And that was the bit that I felt that was missing from COP26, but certainly was in the deliberations around MEPC 77. So I think a balancing of the mid to long term optimism with a near term strategy for really getting on top of emissions was a message that we need to be listening to. So optimistic from the COP26 declarations, but still a huge amount of work that needs to be done.
Very good. A long way to go, right?
A long way to go. Yeah, absolutely.
And then we have a question for you as well, Tom. How can we support the market to adopt new technologies in an uncertain future? I mean, how can you guys help the market?
So certainly it's the focus of a lot of the activity we're doing at the minute to try and get those technologies up and running, to be able to show how they integrate with the wider systems. And this is really where initiatives like the Clean Maritime Demonstrator competition in the UK have their strengths in being able to bring all these different stakeholders together, unlock some funding to do some trials and demonstrators and build confidence that the technology is going to work. And just as being a relevant side point, to echo Gavin's comments with COP, there was a certain definite energy, passion, and absolutely the leaders from shipping companies, governments, everywhere alike, showing a real willingness to actually do something. So enabling initiatives like Clean Maritime Demonstrator, more of that.
Very good, Tom. Very good point. So I'll now thank you very much, all speakers, Tom, Gavin, and Jean. Thank you so much. If the audience have more questions, they can send to DIT. They will be glad to send it to you guys. It was a very good panel. Thank you so much. And we will move on to our second panel of the day, where we are going to talk about like the driving innovation to decarbonizing operations. And our first speaker in the second panel is Mr. Francois Debord. He's the sales director at Srt Marine System. Originally, he's from Brussels, Belgium, like Jean, and currently living in Vancouver. Francois is an expert in the field of Earth observation and business strategies. With a background in corporate sales and leadership, his career spans over several industries, including space, defense, oil and gas, infrastructure, and maritime security. With over 20 years of global professional experience, Francois is passionate about helping his clients tackle the daily challenges they face in order to succeed in their important mandates. Francois is the International Sales Director for Srt Marine System, a British firm developing and deploying maritime safety and security solutions. So, Francois, please, welcome.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Luis. I'm very happy to be here. I think that you guys are going to share my presentation because I was having some issues earlier. So I'm hoping you can do that for me. And I must apologize in a little bit for the darkness around me, but being in Vancouver, it's actually only 5 a.m. here. I wanted to join this panel with you guys, and so I'm quite happy to be here. So yes, I will be talking a little bit about the maritime innovation and the technology behind it, and what the industry can do to reduce the environmental impacts, and what we do specifically at SRT Marine. So I will explain to you a little bit what we do, and give you a little bit of the state of the industry and the state of the shipping industry. So if we can get the next slide, please. So this is a little bit of a, I'm sure everybody knows this, but there's a bit of a reminder. The maritime trade has seen dramatic increase over the last few decades. Today, about 80% of all goods are transported by sea, which is not surprising because 70% of our planet is actually covered by water. So it seems to be the logical way to go from one point to another. And because of that, or through that, I should say, there's about 100,000 transport ship. I think Gavin in the previous panel alluded to that as well. I remember from one of his slides. And out of those, about 6,000 are very large container. Since about the early 1990s, there's an increase of about 35% of the volume of goods that are carried by ships, which is significant, obviously. And overall, there's been over 300% of rise in global ship traffic since 1992. So those are very significant numbers. If we can have the next slide, please. And what does that do? What is the impact, the effects of shipping on the environment? Well, there's a number of pollution issues. Pollution in the air, obviously with emission in the water, sometimes with ship bilging or disturbance, noise, and that's for marine mammals and other fishing species. And of course, sometimes oil spill, unfortunately. Now, the ships themselves are responsible for about 18% of the air pollutants. So it is quite significant as well. The CO2 emissions, we are at risk of them rising up to an increase of 250% if we don't do anything. Yet, ships are still the most energy efficient method to transport those goods and carry things. But the fact that the entire industry is so huge, so big, it still has, even though they are the most energy efficient, a significant effect on the environment. We have the next slide, please. So what is a Srt system, the Srt Marine system, sorry, and what do we do? Well, we are a British firm. We're based next to Bristol, and we specialize in marine tracking, management, and surveillance. We've been doing that for quite a long time, over 30 years. We've pioneered the development of AIS, which is the automatic identification system, which originally was a technology developed to avoid ship-to-ship collisions, so vessel could see each other. And then people realized, and we were part of them, that you can actually use that technology to monitor and track all those vessels around the world. Originally, we were using coastal sensors, and then later on, somebody invented AIS, satellite AIS, and we were able to track ship even when they were further away from shore and out of line of sight of those coastal sensors. We're also the company that invented the first digital aid to navigation, and those are used significantly in port operation and waterways to help traffic move more efficiently. So essentially, SRT developed and promotes turnkey systems to help port authorities, but also navies, fisheries operation, coast guards to monitor their waters and making sure that traffic runs smoothly and we avoid accidents. So we partner with world's authorities around the world to do this. We can have the next slide, please. So, in my first few slides, I gave you a few numbers that are, quite frankly, right scary. They're pretty high. And then what can we do to reduce the impact on the environment? What can we do better? Which is, obviously the central point of this conference today. Well, on our side, obviously, we are not a shipping company. We're not a ship operator. But what we can do is help those operations. We can help streamline the port operation and, for example, reduce wait time. If we reduce wait time and we're more efficient in organizing the ship traffic, then we will curb fossil fuels and those emissions. By also being, able to monitor more closely all the operation in and around the ports, and when vessel arriving even further away from shore, we can help avoid accidents and collision, and therefore limiting or reducing or eliminating all this oil and chemical spill. By anticipating the infrastructure and reducing the various system and combining all of them, we can also get better at managing all this. And we have the next slide too, please. So here are some examples of on how we do that at Srt System and how we help ports manage it. So we use AI, artificial intelligence, and various analytics in our platform that is used for port operators to detect all the vessels, even what we call dark vessel, which is typically vessel that are too small in size or don't display those sensors that make them detectable. We can help with anticipate arrival time and the size of the vessel, the tonnage, so you can be more efficient that way as well, and avoid backlog. We also use different analytics to develop various algorithms, and like the example here on the little picture is showing you a heat map of all the traffic around some islands, and then we can also be more efficient that way. And again, can I have the next slide, please? We also use various visual tools in our system to enhance the monitoring of all those vessels in those waterways in the ports. And you can see here is a couple of screenshots of our 3D augmented reality, where the operator can actually turn the camera or the system around to be, whether they would be seeing from the ship itself or in and around the ships, and then we can see those moving in real time. And what that does is that really enhance the port or the vessel traffic management operator situational awareness and his understanding of all the movement that are happening around the port and all the events. And again, this is something that we do to help avoid collision and spills, reduce wait time, and in the end, reduce emissions. I have the next slide, please. I briefly mentioned earlier the A2 navigation, digital A2 navigation and routing. So typically these are the real ones are installed on a buoy and are helped to create shipping lanes in and around the port. And we can actually expand those ones and create it from each of the real ones up to 10 digital one. And therefore, what you do is you create those highways, if you will, those maritime highways to help again track vessel and help them go more efficiently about their business. Now, also those sensors can be equipped with various other sensors that can detect sulfurs or the water quality or the air quality, and detect pollutions of the vessel in real time. And what that does is that can help the authorities then to intercept, issue fines, and then it can be used in court if there's a lawsuit, for example. Those sensors can also help for predicting the drift of an eventual oil spill when it's fused with weather and current data, and then we can be more efficient in recovery operation or to protect the environment and making sure that it doesn't reach the coast, or it's as limited impact as possible. And finally, again, by using those virtual highways, the port operation can identify the routes that will best save time and therefore save fuels and reduce the environmental impact. Can I have the next slide, please? So, this is a little bit of a flash picture, but it's what I want to leave you with. It's a pretty short presentation, but I want to tell you, the maritime environment is of critical importance for the world economy. There's no denying that, and the traffic is only going to increase. At the same time, the digitalization of the maritime environment is just beginning. We cannot stop shipping. We can't. Nobody is, and yet we have to stop climate change or seriously reducing it. So what does that mean? That means that we should be using technology to find ways to reduce the emission and the pollutions. We at SRT believe that integration, networking the entire maritime environment, maritime domain will be critical to achieve this. And this is, the message I really want to leave you with. The next slide is just the thank you slide. And I was very happy to be invited to this panel. I think this is the work that everybody's doing. All the panelists is quite important, and then we all have a role to play for the future of our planet. And I'm pretty happy to be where I am and do my little part to it. So thank you very much.
Well, we thank you, Francois, very much. Thank you for the nice presentation. I will invite you to stay backstage with your camera on, and at the end of the panel, we'll call you back. You and Andrew Hay. I would like to invite now Andrew Hay to come forward. He's a sales engineer at Marine Group. He's a naval architect by background, like myself. That's why I'm so happy, Andrew. Andrew successfully delivered structural and performance upgrade projects on board a fleet of offshore rigs with Maersk drilling across the globe until 2017. After returning to Scotland, he diversified his skill set through spearheading business development efforts within the Marine Service Division of V Group, a leading marine service organization. Andrew joined the Marine Group in 2020, tasked with responsibility for the development of Marine's site services, vessel equipment, and port infrastructure offerings. Andrew also leads Marine's side of the partnership with Smart Green Shipping, aimed at delivering a fuel-saving retrofit sailing system for the existing fleet of tanker and bulk carrier vessels. So, Andrew, please welcome.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Lewis. I have a feeling that some of what I'm about to say might have been covered by Gavin at International Windship Association and by Francois already, but we'll get there. So, first of all, just to introduce the Malin Group for those who don't know already. Oh, just 2 minutes, so let's set up again. View. There. Okay, so the Malin Group is who I work for now. Is a marine engineering services provider based out of Scotland. So the Malin Group's been around for over 100 years, typically specializing in sort of naval architecture and heavy lift solutions. More recently, we're just taking delivery of our own heavy lift barge, the CDO1, which will be based here on the Clyde. And as been introduced, we've expanded our port infrastructure offering, which we're able to design and fabricate ourselves. So a lot of what we've been looking at on the port side is more directly involved on the passenger front. It's passenger access systems and link spans for ferries. Although a lot of what we've learned and what we've encountered will still be applicable within sort of more commercial ports as well. And again, thank you, Lewis, for the introduction. I was going to put a little bit here, but I think you've covered absolutely everything, apart from obviously my little picture of when I was welding the other day. It was a skill I've picked up as part of the group here. So just to set the scene for everyone here, I've been at the Malin have hosted our own COP26 event for a couple of weeks in Glasgow here. So we were just over the river from where the main event was. So I've been around a lot of the kind of industry leaders and people who are influencing the decisions here, and what I'm seeing is the speed that these changes are going to come in at it's really quite unexpected. The largest customers for international ports, so large logistics organizations and divisions of Amazon, Unilever, NHS UK, who have huge amounts of cargo to ship around the world, are signing up to pledges to move their net zero goal to 2040 rather than 2050. So that means that over the next 19 years, they're going to have to essentially lop off about 5% of that budget each year. So what that means is, although you might have been in a negotiation a few years ago, and you offered a 2% cheaper freight rate for bringing containers through your port, and you're able to win the contract based on that. But with a new contract evaluation in 5 years' time, you might be 20% cheaper than someone else and still lose because they're scoring higher on the green credentials, which procurement will be evaluating pretty heavily. So that's just where this is going to be coming from, and why port operators in particular need to take such notice of this, as well as obviously vessel owners and shipping organizations as well. So if I can just sort of take a step back and I think about a lot of what we're thinking about from port operations here, electrification really allows you to sort of move your carbon emissions and your impact on the atmosphere from a kind of fossil fuels based environment into however it is the electricity is being generated. So as long as the system is supported by green electricity, then there's huge scope for what you can do there. So one way of doing that offsite, quite simply, is a practice, at least in Europe quite commonly now, is through power purchase agreements. Essentially, you go direct to the investor or the operator of green electrical assets. So here we've got Scottish Power, Scottish Southern Electricity, and there'll be international providers for UR as well. And you negotiate to buy the electricity from a particular green generating asset at a set price over a period of time. So it provides you price stability for your electricity and also lets you say that this port is run on green electricity. So that's a pretty key one. It's a pretty easy win that can be negotiated and is commonly done so already. So if you can do that, you've got green electricity, and that's step one. The next stage, another stage, this is, looking at how do we, essentially reduce our need for energy in the port system as well. There's local generation of electricity. There's and just general energy efficiency measures. And I think just to summarize here, this is something that's these are established technologies, and typically I'm not going to go through every single one, but just to draw an example, I know in the International Port of Portsmouth, they managed to save 60% of the electricity use from their lighting just by switching to LED-based lighting. So there's a huge raft of technologies out there that you can use in a similar way, whether it's insulation for refrigeration, if it's electric vehicles, and really there are consultancies out there who are already specializing in offering these services to ports. So I know Ramboll, Royal Haskoning, AECOM, and there'll be a host of other ones as well. So the cost of there's no cost of sort of initiating a conversation with these guys and kind of thinking, right, what can we do next? And that's they will be able to introduce you to so many technologies that are pretty low hanging fruit for reducing your energy consumption overall. There's also a bit of thought about the ecosystem here. Now, electrification is particularly well suited to short range shipping. I happen to know it's definitely not suited to large vessels going long ranges, as I think I saw an estimate for a large container ship to be replaced entirely with batteries would cost about $1 billion. So that's not palatable to anyone. But for short range shipping, very appropriate. I know that over in Holland, Heineken have actually entirely electrified one of their barges that's going from their sort of brewing facilities out to the port. So I think it's about a 100-kilometer trip, and that's got batteries they can just hot swap into the barge. It's the Alphanar, that's called. So short-range vessels, definitely applicable for that. Potentially even local fishing fleets as well. If the vessels aren't going very far, there's room to offset any other works, any other carbon emissions you have by reducing the emissions that are in use, that are undertaken from the fleet there. It's also particularly well suited to pilot boats. We look a little bit at repower of vessels, but pilot boats, again, it's a scenario where you have a short range vessel which goes out on a number of trips to pilot out, to guide the vessel into port. It's a great use case for electrification, or for if you want to use hydrogen and fuel as well. These short range trips are the easiest ones to integrate these systems in. Again, there's on-site generation as well. I've got a picture up there from the port of Seattle, and I know that array up there saves them $10,000 a year. So again, a lot of this will come out from a consultancy report, or any local knowledge that's held of the area, or if there's government grants, even better. I don't know exactly what's on offer from the Brazilian government, but I'm sure you guys will know better than I do. So if we move away from the electricity consumption and that side of things, what I can talk about more from being an equipment supplier is there needs to be a bit of a step change in negotiations, as I've seen. So when I've bid on contracts with port infrastructure, usually it's about 50% of the score is your technical performance, and 50% of your score is your commercial performance. But there's almost no emphasis on sustainability, on social impact, on the environmental case for your structure over its lifespan, and that needs to be heavily addressed. There needs to be a more holistic approach. Probably this will be led by governments at the high level, because contract evaluation needs to be more holistic as we move forward, and we appreciate the climate emergency that's coming forth. And it's even simple pieces. So if we supply port equipment to ports around Scotland, which is fantastic because it avoids a need for any international call-outs and flights in the event of breakdown. It's simple things like making sure that your suppliers have people on standby locally, so that you don't have unnecessary flights. It's just a simple practice, and it needs a more holistic look at that supply chain. Aside from that, another piece that I'm quite familiar with is the database solutions. So this has been covered in Francois by more detail. My background is I've worked with a company based in Copenhagen called EC. EC more than happy to sign anyone up for trials of their software. It's a similar sort of offering where EC look at the scheduled ETA of ships coming into port. I believe the figure from over there is that about 50% of container ships are more than 8 hours late, some with minimal notice periods. So if you're mobilizing your site teams to the port, you've got congestion in berths as a result of that, people not giving you sufficient notification of when they're going to arrive. You've got vessels idling at sea with emissions there. So by tightening up on that system and by providing more visibility over when vessels will arrive and the reliability of those schedules, you can not only reduce your operating costs, but it improves your emissions status as well. Another interesting thing that I've seen at COP actually is the use of live monitoring of emissions and air quality. Now this is in use. It's Odfjell Shipping have been doing this. And so what they've done is they've been able to say, okay, we will reduce our emissions by this much if we are able to invest in these technologies. Now, those technologies would be quite expensive to retrofit, but because they've been able to sort of demonstrate the emission savings that it's having, they've been able to go to green bonds and venture capitalists to unlock that funding. And there's a huge demand out there in green funds to invest in places where they can, they not just return a profit for themselves, but they can make a difference in the world. And that's another avenue for if some of these technologies, particularly when you look at alternative fuels and the infrastructure required there, it's quite expensive. So if you can get any kind of additional funding access by packaging that up as a green investment, that opens up other options for you. So just closing slides here. Again, I haven't touched on marine fuels in particular, just because that's such an extensive topic with a debate between hydrogen, ammonia, on where that's going to come from. But as Gavin's touched on already, alternative arrangements and propulsion systems are absolutely coming in form of wind assist at least, and that's the work that I've been involved with smart green shipping, where we've almost finished getting the funding to build the prototype and demonstrator piece, so that we can retrofit this onto a couple of vessels and get some make sure that the data actually lines up with the CFD projections that we've got already. But that's another way of looking at it as well, for port owners and people who've got a portfolio in the marine sector. You can consider divesting some of these funds into sustainable technology as well. I know that Smart Green Shipping, for example, are looking for, I think it's $1.6 million, I believe it is, to finish up their funding. It's really not a huge amount in the grand scale of things. So there's other options there as well. And ports are always going to be the center of the hub for this phase of the transition. Vessel owners can put all the new fuels they want on their ships, but if it's not supportive infrastructure at the port, it ain't going to happen. So just to highlight how critical ports are as the central hub in this transition, that whatever happens, you're always going to be there. And please feel free to get involved, reach out to myself, or if you have any questions about any of the technologies I mentioned, just drop me a note anytime. Thank you.
Very nice, Andrew. I'll ask you to stay here on the stage, and I'll invite Francois to join us. There you are, Francois. We have one question for each of you guys. I will just kindly ask you to be very fast, because we're really running out of time. So Francois, you first. A lot of people talk about, when it comes to reducing emissions from transportation. A lot of people talk about fuel efficiency. There is also logistic efficiency, And I saw one of your slides. You're talking about reducing waiting times, and streamlining port operation. Could you elaborate a little bit that for us?
Sure. I think everybody's been talking about that a little bit, but for us at SRT, it means looking further out at sea and really anticipating when vessels will arrive. And Andrew just mentioned that on average vessels are 8 hours late. So it just increase idle time for other vessels, crews on the ground, even then trucks that carry the goods, and then they're sitting there as well, and it's really not efficient. So our point of view is integrating all these data points and really give the operators and the port operation a global use not the right word, but an extended view of what's happening in the ecosystem, and so they can plan better and make sure that we streamline, again I use that word a lot, but streamline the operation, and that way reducing the emissions.
Very good point. Andrew, we have a question for you as well from Stephen Lua. I will read it. What are your thoughts on the prospect of liquid hydrogen as a maritime fuel? That's a
yeah. Well, hydrogen, if it's generated there's different types of hydrogen essentially depending on how it's generated. So if we assume that hydrogen generation comes from an all renewable source, it's essentially an extension of the electrical grid, which is the best case scenario. Now there are some changes with hydrogen as opposed to just using it as a regular fuel. If we get even around this the different engine rooms and technologies that we need, hydrogen is about half as energy dense as fuel is today. So your bunkering systems will have to be larger, or your vessels will need to be more efficient as well. And it's just to touch on that, it's a fantastic fuel, and once that's rolled out, it solves so many problems for the world. But it's not the only part of the answer. There's answers in vessel efficiency in there as well, and that's where these wind assist technologies that we've been talking about, myself and Gavin, play such a key role as well. If they can take 20% of the vessel's energy input. You take another 50% from the hydrogen, and the 30% you can find from other technologies, air lubrication. You can find that from general steaming and design efficiencies. Then that delivers the zero emissions shipping system that you're looking for. So absolutely a part of the answer, but there's multiple facets to it as well.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more. So I'll thank you very much, both of you, Francois and Andrew. I mean, for your time, Francois. I think you should go back to sleep now, right? It's like very early in the morning. And anyway, for the people in the audience, you can always send the questions to DIT. They will be glad to forward it to Andrew and to Francois. So I thank you guys again, and we'll move forward to our next panel, our third panel of the day. It's an overview of opportunities in Brazil. And our first speaker is Srt Monteiro. She is the General Coordinator of Infrastructure Fund Project in the Ministry of Infrastructure in Brazil, MINFRA, as we call it here in Brazil. She used to work at the Ministry of Infrastructure in the economic area with an emphasis on finance, microeconomics, and infrastructure financing at the National Bank of Economic and Social Development, BNDES, as we call it here, where she dedicated herself to the development of investment policies in a variable income and the structuring of concessions, the PPP, private-public partnership. In 2021, it started to contribute to the agenda of fostering instruments at MINFRA, namely the Merchant Marine Fund, the FMM, incentive debentures and REID, as well as improving the structure of concessions in transport and logistics in the country. Srt Monteiro has a degree in economic science from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, a master in economics from Fundação Getúlio Vargas, and MBA from the Hult International Business School, and an international specialization in strategic management from the London Business School. So, Srt, please welcome. The floor is yours. Very nice to have you here.
Thanks, Luis. Can you see my presentation?
Not yet. There we go.
Okay. The aim today is to present the main Brazilian government incentives in order to develop infrastructure. The first federal incentive is the Merchant Marine Fund, called FMM in Portuguese. The second one is related to income tax benefit to acquire infrastructure corporate bonds. And the last one is a special incentive regime for infrastructure called REID in Portuguese, which is a tax exemption to sell, import equipments and machineries and services in infrastructure projects. Starting with a Merchant Marine Fund. This fund is a naval fund created to support navigation and shipbuilding industries in Brazil. The Ministry of Infrastructure controls this fund through a managing committee composed of government, ministries, official federal banks, and sector and civil organizations. So this managing committee is responsible for approving projects of Brazilian enterprise that obtain banking loans with special conditions on interest and amortization. Part of the AFREN collection also directs toward non-refundable deposit in special accounts owned by Brazil cabotage navigation and inland waterway transport companies. So these companies can use these deposits that are now refundable to finance projects and pay financial expenses. The F-frame collection is a resource of 3 other funds. However, since the agenda today, I will highlight the FNDCT that directs toward supporting with now refundable and refundable funding, technological and scientific research in navigation. So which projects are up to finance? Vessels construction, modernization, conversion, including repairs, construction and also modernization of shipyards, scientific and technological research. Other application toward merchant marine and shipbuilding development in Brazil could be approved as priority by managing committee. The financial condition, however, hasn't been regulated yet by monetary committee. So it has been discussed between Ministry of Infrastructure and Economics during the review of 4,919 regulation, because we think that these other investment application can bring flexibility to merchant marine fund. So some numbers, in the last decade on average, the FMM disbursed close to 43% of these resources. Between 2011 and 2015, the fund disbursement reached its peak, close to 100%. However, shipbuilding companies in Brazil continue to operate in a challenged market environment with comparatively low order book as captured by FMM disbursement. I think I jumped one of the slides. Let's come back. In this slide, we want to highlight how many projects were approved by Fund Managing Committee this year. 18 projects were approved in vessel construction and vessel repair modernization, corresponding 99 vessels, 21 offshore support vessels, 70 cargo vessels, 5 harbor tugs and pushers, 2 cargo vessels, and 1 floating dock. The total investment involving these 99 vessels is $0.2 billion. As shown here, the disbursement on average is 43% in the last decade. And also the contribution on fleet growth, reached almost 20%. Based on this reality and embracing the sustainable agenda, the Brazilian Congress has been discussing cabotage transport incentive program, which aim to create incentives to modal shift from road transport, which brings much more CO2 emissions, almost 80%, according to IEA agency, to cabotage, that it's almost 48 CO2 emission in this case. So this incentive program also aims to optimize the use of FRAND resources, allowing to this fund, to FMM, to finance Brazilian ports as well as foreign companies when the services are carried out by Brazilian shipyard or specialized Brazilian company. So it's a huge improvement. It brings flexibility to FMM applications. Internationally, in this agenda, IMOU brought some targets to control greenhouse gases. This hasn't been mandatory yet in Brazil. The focus has been reducing CO2 emission, providing federal funds to vessel modernization and construction, as well as scientific and technological development. So the fund supports this sustainable investment only through its credit lines. And also that another fund that receives resource from AFREM, financed with now refundable and refundable funds, technological and scientific research in navigation. Coming to the second incentives, income, sorry. This incentive is related to income tax benefit to acquire infrastructure corporate bonds. For private investors, the income tax go to 0%, and for investor firms to 15%, a huge difference from the income statement, the income taxes charged on now incentive bonds. So the projects can use this incentive in transport and logistics, energy, sewage and waste management, and telecom. The issuers are private partners in PPP, public-private partnerships, tenants, and special purpose entities. Currently, the legal framework of these incentives doesn't incorporate additional benefits to low carbon projects. However, Ministry of Infrastructure has been applying ESG metrics in public-private partnership structuring. In numbers, to 2021 until October, the issuance value of this instrument reached almost 38 billion of reais. Logistics and transport represents 28% of this total, and ports almost 5%. Until November, were accounts 20 issuance, reaching $2 billion in value. So despite the current legal framework, there is attendance, we can foresee attendance in Brazil. Companies are starting incorporating in their public offering targets of carbon emission reduction to demonstrate their operational respect to global environmental demand. The last incentive is a special incentive regime for infrastructure development called REID in Portuguese. It provides 5 years tax exemption of PIS and COFINS taxes on selling, importing equipments and machineries or services direct to infrastructure projects and incorporate on fixed assets. In the last decade, this benefit represents 40.5% of the total capex of 111 projects that received this benefit. I try to be quick today, but please be free to reach us out. The QR codes direct you to the principal web page of each federal incentive discussed on this presentation.
Thank you, Charisse. Thank you very much. I will ask you to stay on the backstage with your camera on, waiting for the Q&A session at the end of the panel. And so we'll have some questions for you at the end and I invite all the audience to put the questions in the Q&A chat. And now I would like to invite our next speaker, Danielle Audigeri. He is the new business support in the Ministry of Infrastructure, Brazil. He has over 20 years of professional experience, most of that time in senior roles such as a manager or project leader and team leader. He has been working in the Brazilian federal government since March 2010 as a public servant in the career of a specialist in civil aviation regulation at the National Civil Aviation Agency, ANAC. He holds a PhD in transport from the University of Brasilia, a master in logistics and port management from Universidade Politécnica de Valência, and a master in transport engineering from the University of São Paulo, USP. Also a trainee in urban transport planning and project at JICA in Japan, with a 70-day internship in Tokyo, and civil engineer graduated from the Federal University of Ceará. So Danielle, please feel very welcome to make your presentation. I just want to remember you and all the speakers that we are a little bit behind. We're like 10 minutes behind now. So if you could speed up, sorry for asking that. Please go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to talk a little about some opportunities of partnership in Brazilian port sector and learn about low carbon maritime highlights. Thank you so much. I ask you excuse for everybody, but for me it's more easy and flow to speak in Portuguese because I don't speak it in English daily. So to guarantee to presentation on time, I will speak in Portuguese, but the presentation are in English. Okay. Let's start. Ok. Eu vou apresentar basicamente aqui um overview acerca do setor portuário brasileiro e 3 diferentes modalidades de participação da iniciativa privada no desenvolvimento e exploração portuária no Brasil. A gente tem, o Brasil ele tem uma costa de mais de 7 mil quilômetros e mais de 13 mil quilômetros de vias navegáveis. 80% do PIB do país se concentra ao longo dessa costa, né? A costa que fica basicamente no Atlântico, né? 95% do comércio nacional e internacional é feito através dos portos, tá? E essa infraestrutura portuária brasileira ela é vital, tanto para o mercado interno como também para as exportações do país. Atualmente, aqui está a localização dos principais portos brasileiros, são 35 portos públicos. Desses, 17 são companhias docas públicas administradas sob controle do governo federal e o restante são portos públicos que estão sendo desenvolvidos e explorados através de acordos, né, de delegação com as unidades da federação, municípios ou estados. Aqui a gente tem um rápido um slide que mostra um pouco como é que está a distribuição em termos de movimentação de cargas, seja nos portos públicos, seja nas instalações privadas, que eu vou falar um pouquinho mais adiante, que são os chamados TUPs, terminais de uso privado. A gente verifica que há uma predominância da movimentação de carga nesses terminais de uso privado. Eles são bem mais numerosos do que os portos públicos, a gente vai verificar isso mais adiante. E se verifica que um crescimento em torno de 30% na movimentação de carga nos portos públicos e de 40% na movimentação de carga nos portos, nesses portos privados, esses terminais de uso privado, ao longo desses últimos 10 anos. Aqui, nos últimos 3 anos, foi contratualizado, digamos assim, autorizado, um montante de aproximadamente 17 bilhões de reais em investimentos no setor portuário brasileiro, dividido aqui em arrendamentos, né, terminais portuários arrendados dentro dos portos públicos, seja novos terminais, ou seja, a renovação de contratos de arrendamento já existentes, com extensão de prazo, e os investimentos em terminais de uso privado, que são os chamados TUBs, que eu já comentei, vou aprofundar um pouquinho. Entrando agora aqui na parte dos arrendamentos, né, que é a primeira modalidade de participação da iniciativa privada nesse setor. Basicamente é uma modalidade que é através de leilão. Normalmente o lance vencedor ganha o direito de exploração dessa área dentro do porto organizado, dentro do porto público, por assim dizer. De uma maneira geral, os preços a serem praticados, eles não sofrem regulação, são livres. Há alguns casos específicos onde há uma situação de regulação em função da contestabilidade na qual está inserido esse terminal, né, o seu mercado em volta. Então, há necessidade de uma regulação um pouco mais rígida. Esses contratos podem ter duração de até 70 anos. Normalmente, eles têm duração de 30, 35 anos, podendo ser renovados. Há um prazo para o início dos investimentos, no caso, tanto de terminais já existentes, que estão sendo relicitados, como de terminais novos, os chamados greenfields. Esse prazo, normalmente, para o início dos investimentos é de 2 anos para os brownfields e 4 anos para o greenfield. E esses terminais eles estão sujeitos à utilização da mão de obra do óleo, né? Que é uma figura que nós temos aqui no país e também existe em outros países também. Aqui são alguns dos investimentos autorizados no ano de 2019, granéis líquidos lá no norte, granéis líquidos e gás. Sim, tivemos 6 leilões no total no norte e nordeste, nordeste mais 3, desculpa, e tivemos também outros leilões no sul e sudeste, grandes leilões, totalizando aqui 13 leilões, basicamente de combustíveis, a sua grande maioria, e celulose e granéis minerais. No ano de 2020, tivemos 8 leilões, mais um montante de investimentos ainda maior, quase o dobro do anterior, em torno de 2,4 bilhões. E no ano de 2021, até o momento, tivemos já 12 leilões, que está a localização no país onde ocorreram os leilões desses terminais dentro de portos públicos, para a movimentação de soja, combustíveis, granéis vegetais e carga geral, totalizando 1,7 bilhões. Entrando agora um pouco nos terminais de uso privado, que é uma outra modalidade de participação da iniciativa privada no setor portuário brasileiro, o fluxo é um pouco diferente. Normalmente são terminais, mas são áreas fora do porto organizado, muitas vezes próximos do porto organizado, mas fora. Não há ali o regime de preço é totalmente livre, não há um compartilhamento de riscos, o risco é do investidor, e o investidor, para poder obter autorização de implementar um terminal e passar a explorar, desenvolver e movimentar a carga dele, ele tem que demonstrar que ele tem a posse daquela área, que, como eu falei, está fora do porto organizado, e ele é responsável pela implantação de toda a infraestrutura, seja de acesso aquaviário, seja de acesso terrestre, ou infraestrutura de acostagem dos navios, etc. e tal. Normalmente, essa modalidade, o prazo é de 25 anos, mas que pode ser prorrogado sucessivas vezes, conforme o interesse da administração pública, o interesse público nisso. E, uma vez aprovado e dada essa autorização, aqui tem-se um tempo maior, em torno de 5 anos, para que sejam iniciados os investimentos. Após esse período, não havendo manifestação, a autorização ela perde seu efeito. Aqui são alguns números. A gente tem atualmente 253 terminais privados autorizados, e aqui a distribuição no país, bem mais do que os portos organizados que a gente falou, que eu tinha comentado anteriormente. Aqui é Peraí, só um minutinho. Pronto. Aqui são os contratos que foram firmados nos últimos 3 anos, incluindo 2021, contratos de adesão, ou seja, esses contratos de adesão nada mais são do que a própria autorização, né, e o fluxo de investimentos previstos em cada um desses contratos. Então, em 2019 foram 41 contratos, quase 2 bilhões de reais de investimentos autorizados. Em 2020 foram 29 contratos, quase 7 bilhões de reais de investimentos. Teve um grande terminal de gás em 2020 aqui. Em 2021, 36 autorizações, com um montante de 1,76 bilhões de reais. Atualmente, a gente tem 108 terminais nesses últimos 3 anos, que é o resultado que eu falei anteriormente, que totalizam aí um montante já de 28,43 bilhões de investimentos, considerando o que já foi feito e o que está previsto a ser feito também, contratualizado. E agora entrando aqui no último tópico, que, digamos assim, é algo mais inovador, que seria a privatização não de terminais, não de áreas específicas dentro ou fora do porto, mas sim a privatização, a concessão, a desestatização de portos organizados, ou seja, passar o papel da autoridade portuária, o papel administrativo da autoridade portuária, como provedora de infraestrutura, como mantenedora da infraestrutura e desenvolvedora daquela região, daquele território, representado ali pela poligonal do porto, para um agente privado, sobre um regime de regulação e observando as diretrizes de planejamento do setor que continuam a cargo do poder público. Alguns modelos que são discutidos nesse processo de privatização das autoridades portuárias, desse papel administrativo da autoridade portuária, e aqui eu não estou falando, como eu frisei, do terminal, né, da operação, mas sim do provimento da infraestrutura, canal de acesso, acessos terrestres, infraestrutura de acostagem, berços, dolphins, pátios, enfim. Aconteceu alguma coisa aqui? Não, peraí. Era para aparecer alguma coisa aqui. Não sei o que foi que eu vi. Bem, era para aparecer os 5 tipos de possibilidades que a gente está estudando em termos de modelagem de desestatização, que vai desde abertura de capital das companhias públicas responsáveis por esses portos, companhias públicas criadas para serem as autoridades portuárias, até o processo de uma concessão simples ou uma concessão atrelada a uma venda direta do controle dessas companhias, sem a sua pulverização de capital, ou mesmo um modelo que se aproxima mais do que seria o TUP, né, onde, na verdade, é feito uma cessão, uma autorização para exploração daquela área, seria um processo nesse sentido. Então, são algumas modalidades que a gente está estudando e propondo. E nessa linha da desestatização das autoridades portuárias, nós temos 4 projetos em andamento. O primeiro deles, que deve ter o edital possivelmente publicado agora até o final do ano, mais tardar em janeiro, é o da Companhia Docas de Vitória, que é um porto pequeno a médio que movimenta 7 milhões de toneladas por ano. Na verdade, não é um porto, são 2 portos sobre a administração dessa autoridade portuária, o Porto de Vitória Vila Velha e o Porto de Barra do Riacho. É um porto que já tem um mix interessante de cargas, né, com granéis sólidos, granéis líquidos, a parte de container, carga geral. Então, esse será o primeiro que vai a leilão, passando o papel da autoridade portuária, o papel administrativo dela com o agente privado. Na sequência, a gente está trabalhando também a modelagem para a desestatização do Porto de Santos, o maior porto da América Latina. E aí, sim, estamos falando aqui de um porto que movimenta, esse ano de 2021, a previsão é chegar próximo de 121 milhões de toneladas movimentadas no porto, né? Então, a infraestrutura portuária mais complexa que nós temos hoje. E aí também estamos discutindo a passagem do papel administrativo de autoridade portuária para a iniciativa privada. Temos um pequeno porto também que está sendo estudado, que apesar de ser pequeno, hoje ele tem uma movimentação muito pequena, abaixo de 1 milhão de toneladas, ele ainda não tem uma vocação muito bem definida, né? Basicamente existem pequenos operadores lá, um volume muito pequeno de carga sendo movimentado. É um porto que tem área, tem potencial, mas a grande importância dele é que ele está inserido na região, digamos assim, mais rica, a área de influência economicamente mais importante aqui da América Latina, fica próximo de São Paulo, né? E é um porto que tem condições interessantes, então é um outro modelo que a gente está estudando aqui, um outro projeto. Temos também um porto muito importante, diferente do anterior, do de São Sebastião, que é o porto de Itajaí, em Santa Catarina. Por que diferente? Porque esse já tem uma vocação muito bem definida, extremamente consolidada. É um porto que só movimenta container. No ano passado foram quase 6 milhões de toneladas movimentadas, né? Então é um porto que já tem a sua vocação muito bem definida, muito bem conhecido ali todos os aspectos do complexo portuário como um todo, e das suas condições de canal de acesso também. Então, é um outro projeto que a gente está em desenvolvimento nessa linha da desestatização das autoridades portuárias, né? E aqui, por último, um breve schedule das principais etapas de cada um desses projetos. Como eu falei, a previsão da publicação dos documentos de edital, né? Binding Documents, para a Companhia Docas Codesa, a previsão é dezembro agora, ou mais tardar início de janeiro, possivelmente um leilão em fevereiro de 2022. Já tanto o Porto de Santos quanto o Porto de São Sebastião e Itajaí, teremos a publicação dos editais no ano de 2022 e o leilão ocorrendo entre setembro e dezembro de 2022. E, por último, o projeto de Codeba, que é um projeto que eu deixei para mencionar por último aqui, que são 3 portos, Salvador, Aratu e Ilhéus, que são administrados por essa autoridade portuária, que é um projeto que está se iniciando, né? A gente está na fase final agora para realizar o kick-off dele no início de janeiro de 2022, e aqui está a pipeline das principais etapas. Bem, era isso. Obrigado, Luiz.
Muito bom, Daniel, muito bom mesmo. Eu vou chamar a Charisse aqui para se juntar a gente aqui. Lembrando a todos que o webinar tem tradução simultânea, a gente está fazendo esse painel em português. Tem aqui 2 perguntas, uma para cada um, muito rápida, porque a gente está realmente muito atrasado aqui no tempo. Peço desculpa a vocês 2 por isso. Então, Charisse, a primeira pergunta para você, você colocou no slide, né, e eu achei bem pertinente, né, a importância do AFREM no desenvolvimento tecnológico, né, até você tem na parte de modernização, está previsto, né, e a gente vai precisar de modernizar a frota para poder atender essa agenda ESG. Só que, ao mesmo tempo, tem o debate da BR do Mar acontecendo. Como é que vocês veem o futuro do AFREM e do Fundo de Marinha Mercante nessa história toda, a contribuição deles para a descarbonização do nosso setor? Pergunta de $1 milhão, Charisse.
Como você começou em português, vou responder em português. Então, como é que a gente está vislumbrando, né? O que existe hoje na BR do Mar, que enfim, está em discussão no Congresso. Semana passada, foi na sexta ou na quinta, tiveram novas inclusões, né? Então, o texto, como é um projeto de lei longo, né, acaba passando por todas as comissões, isso é esperado, então o texto ainda é incerto, mas, na verdade, a gente espera uma redução, né, do AFREM, dos recursos originários do AFREM, mas isso também traz competitividade para o setor, porque você tinha aí uma taxa de 100% para empresas, para importação, né, frete de empresas de longo curso estrangeiras. Então, era uma taxa muito alta. Então, assim, apesar de ter essa redução, a gente enxerga também novas aplicações, como eu coloquei, né, e também fortalecer a indústria local com essa possibilidade de fazer reparos e construção, muito mais reparo, modernização e conversão em estaleiros brasileiros, mas é um grande incentivo ao uso da cabotagem e navegação interior. Então, principalmente cabotagem, o que implica que é um foco do governo a redução de emissões, não de todos os gases de efeito estufa, mas do CO2.
Muito bom.
Então, a gente espera conseguir. Eu acho que essa parte não vai ser, acho que o governo tem, dentro do planejamento estratégico do Ministério da Infraestrutura, a gente já acompanha indicadores de navegação interior e cabotagem, então eu acho que esse conteúdo ele não vai sumir da BR do Mar.
Muito bom, Charisse. E temos uma pergunta para você também, Daniel, do Leonardo Steiner. Ele pergunta como o governo brasileiro está se preparando para a descarbonização da indústria naval, né, do Ship Decarbonization, e como as autoridades portuárias, terminais e o governo está coordenando o trabalho nessa área. Se puder, uma resposta sucinta, Daniel. Desculpa de novo a pressão no tempo.
Não, tudo bem. Basicamente, está se procurando se internalizar aos poucos as melhores práticas ESG, né, nas autoridades portuárias hoje atuais. As autoridades portuárias são todas públicas. Então, há um processo grande de conscientização, verificação e de incentivo para que se busque se alinhar as melhores práticas de acordo com a situação de cada porto. Hoje a gente tem um indicador de desenvolvimento ambiental chamado IDA, no qual faz uma avaliação geral de como é que está se portando cada uma dessas autoridades portuárias. E, em função disso, a gente tenta trabalhar em cima desses dados, oportunidades de melhoria, e existe até um prêmio, de acordo o maior IDA que foi atingido naquele período pela companhia portuária, ou qual foi a companhia portuária que teve o maior avanço do seu IDA em relação um ano em relação ao outro. Isso está criando um ambiente muito bom, muito interessante, né, que é o Prêmio Brasil Mais Portos, para que se desperte essa consciência nas autoridades portuárias, elas busquem cada vez mais trabalhar ações positivas para reduzir a emissão de carbonos. E isso vai ter continuidade com o advento agora de uma gestão privada assumindo essas companhias novas. Tentei ser bem sucinto, tá?
Muito bom, Daniel. Excelente ponto, muito bom. Eu vou voltar para o inglês aí, só para deixar o pessoal da tradução simultânea loucos. But thank you very much, Danielle and Chariz, for your participation. It was very good. And I remember, again, remind everyone that you can send the questions to DIT, and they will be glad to forward it to Danielle and Chariz. So thank you again. And we'll go to our last but not least panel, the fourth panel of the day, Green Funding Support. Our first speaker is Federica Giogametti. She's the Business Development Senior Associate and the Multi-Asset Private Market from the London Stock Exchange Group, LSEG. Federica is part of the business development team for London Stock Exchange place, and she works with the multi-asset private markets, focusing on fixed income in APAC, Latin America, and CEE and CIS. At LSEG, she has covered roles across product management in FTSE Russell's Sustainable Indexes team, Group Corporate Development, and Borsa Italiana's Equity Primary Markets Division. Federica has previously worked as an analyst for sustainable finance-focused private equity boutiques in Milan and Vienna. She holds a master's degree in international business from Grenoble École de Management and a bachelor's degree in international finance from Bocconi University. So, Federica, sorry, my pronunciation.
No, absolutely no worries at all.
But we are very impressed with your, background. So you're very welcome. Please go ahead for your presentation. Nice. I just remind you, as I did for all the other speakers, we're really short of time. So
I'll try to make it as concise as possible. Absolutely, and thank you very much for having me here. I have a few slides, but I'll try to only go over the most important ones, just on the basis of time. But what I would like to cover with you is just a quick overview on what LSEG offers, our performance and our presence in the sustainable finance market space, and a few case studies and examples of issuers from Latin America, or in general infrastructure issuers that have listed bonds with us in the last few years. So starting with that, we can go over to our first slide. This to have a quick background of LSE. We aren't just a stock exchange. That is our core division. It's where we started, but we have grown incredibly in the last few years. And this year we acquired Refinitiv data. Therefore, we cover the entire spectrum of the various listing processes, from IPOs to fixed income to everything that is around foreign exchange, data, and even more. If we focus on our fixed income in the next slide, we have been present in the space for many years. There's more than 13,000 listed debt instruments on our markets, that have raised more than $5 trillion in over 50 currencies, over 80 countries. So it's really a global affair, and something that we want to keep growing, and just keep giving visibility to all these countries looking at coming to the markets. Talking about markets, if we move to the next slide, LSE has two key markets where you can list debt. These two markets are the main market and the international securities market. Main market, our usual one, most famous one, we've always had it. International securities market is an MTF market. Therefore, main market is regulated by an external regulator, the FCA. Well, the ISM is entirely regulated by the London Stock Exchange. That allows just a faster listing process, a more tailored approach to the market, that a lot of issuers that are potentially looking to save a bit of time or looking to tap the markets for the first time can use, just to have a bit of a simpler way into the market. This can also be seen in the next slide. This is just a view on, as you can see, with ISM, it's just a much more streamlined process to get to the market. Now, going into the key part, the sustainable finance bit, and how LSE has approached that. So if we can go to slide 7, so a couple of slides after. The next one. Thank you. So this is just an overview of how much sustainable debt capital markets have been growing. They have raised over $500 billion just in H1, are expected to arrive at $1 trillion by end of the year, and to $5 trillion in the next couple of years. So it's just an exponential growth. And as you can see in the second graph, it's not only growth of green bonds, but especially in the last year and a half, a lot has been done around social and sustainability bonds as well. If you can go to the next slide, well, the previous one was global. This is a focus on LSE. So LSE was the first exchange ever that had a green bond segment, and this was back in 2015. We started developing this. The market was still very young at the time in the green bond space, but we saw that there was appetite, and what we wanted to do was be proactive within the market, and so we started to develop more segments and a more holistic approach to this kind of security. So we, in 2019, we created the sustainable bond market, which included green, social, and sustainable bonds, and have been growing that market ever since to include even more segments. We are now at more than $130 billion equivalent of active bonds on our sustainable bond market. And these come from all over the world. Actually, one of the most frequent issuers in the last year was Chile, and in various currencies and any kind of sectors. So it's really a broad kind of market. If we can move to the next one. Here you can see just how much the sustainable bond market has grown. So as I said, we started from green, just green in 2015, moved to green, sustainability, and social in 2019, and have been growing since. The latest additions have been sustainability-linked bonds we've seen quite a few of them come in from the likes of Tesco, EBRD, and a few other issuers, and then beginning of this year, we added a transition segment. Transition is one that has been taken into consideration quite a bit from issuers such as oil and gas, large infrastructure, airlines, just companies that have a large impact on the sustainable side, that would like to transition from a brown to a green economy, and these kind of transition bonds can support them in this process. If we can go to the next slide. So having done all of this work behind the development of the sustainable bond market, and even more throughout the full exchange, because what we've just looked at is just dedicated to debt, but there's such a variety of of possibilities and of offering in the green space throughout all of the London Stock Exchange, from the green economy mark in for equity to our ESG data in our data facilities. Thanks to this, we won the Sustainable Investment Awards for 2 years, and hopefully next year as well. One quick thing I wanted to walk you through is in the next slide, just to have a quick idea on what is needed to admit bonds to the sustainable bond market. So what we are looking for, that we need, is a certified use of proceeds, and in general an independent review of the proceeds of the bonds. After that, if you go to the next slide, all you need to do is submit a very short checklist, and your bond can be admitted to the SBM. This is also entirely free of charge. So you will only pay to admit your bond to our markets, but no additional charge to have it within the sustainable bond market. If we can skip a couple of slides and go into the case studies, so I can use so we can use this last couple of minutes. So a few case studies on LATAM, and then I'll move more into a bit of infrastructure. So here we have Mexico. Mexico issued their first SDG bond with us 2 years ago, and then issued their second one this year. They are using their bonds that are aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, to focus on financing sources that will help the country grow in a sustainable way. If we go to the next slide, so Mexico, as we said, a couple of bonds, but with Chile we can really see the growth that a country and an issuer can have in the space. So Chile issued their first green bond in June 2019, did a second one shortly after, kept doing green bonds since, every single year, multiple times a year. From the beginning of this year, they also issued their first social and sustainable bonds. They are trying to issue internationally almost only sustainable securities. They have an incredible pipeline of projects, and that is what is really supporting them. They have a lot of very strong projects behind, and the investors are ecstatic to see that kind of bonds in the market. The desire to have green, social, or sustainable bonds from Latin America is very, very high, but there isn't yet that many with regards to the demand that the investor have. So every single bond that Chile has done in the space has been priced better and better and better. So the interest from investors is there, and it's definitely a great moment to start looking to list a green bond internationally. If we move to a couple of slides after, slide 18. So an interesting one, this isn't a green bond, but it just shows you the interest that investors have for Latin America. Antofagasta, Chilean mining, came to our markets end of last year with their debut bond. Their debut bond was oversubscribed by 12 times. The interest is massive. Investors want to be in the region and want to do it soon. Now moving more towards infrastructure. If we go to the next slide, this is a quite new program that has come to our markets. This is Abu Dhabi Ports. They have 11 ports and terminals in the UAE and Guinea. They have issued now $1 billion under their program, and are aiming to issue more. The issuance was more than 4.5 times oversubscribed. A lot of interest also there from investors. Infrastructure is a strong one, especially if the company that stands behind has a clear path on new projects. For the next slide, this is another infrastructure one, but this one is green. So this is the Indian Railway Finance Corporation. They have been issuing with us for many, many years, and in 2017 decided to come with their debut green dollar bond. Very well priced. A lot of interest also here from investors who didn't see that many deals of this type in the region, and they came internationally. And investors internationally gathered to really look into this kind of listing. So as you can see, there's a broad range of opportunities within LSE to raise capital, to really further your projects and be able to grow your company even more. And the international capital is what it can do. It can really open your company to a lot more opportunities, both in the normal and in the sustainable finance space. We have recently developed a few additional capabilities, especially around the possibility of doing virtual deal and non-deal roadshow. And these have been working extremely well, especially with issuers that aren't that much known in the international investor space. Allowing them to do non-deal roadshow before coming to the market has really been able to make sure they were front and center in the mind of investors, and were able to get really good pricing in the listing of their bonds. I hope I didn't run too much over time. I just wanted to give a quick overview of what raising debt in the sustainable finance space on LSE could do for you. I'm happy to chat even around green funds or equity, and put you in touch with the right people within LSE. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the Q&A, but please feel free to reach out to me. Very happy to have a chat after the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Federica. Well, very nice presentation. We have some questions for you, but we can send it to you through the IT. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Please send everything through. I'm really sorry I can't stay. I have to run to another conference, but it was a pleasure to be here, and very happy to have any additional chats and questions on this.
Great. Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you very much. Ciao. Have a lovely. Bye-bye.
You too. So our next speaker is Steve Carlsley. He's an international origination manager at UK Export Finance, UKEF. Steve has worked with UKEF for many years in a variety of roles. He is currently part of the International Business Development Team, which aims to raise awareness of UKEF's financial support overseas and in the UK, of course, and works closely with the FCDO and DIT sectors specialists, where exported credit support may be a key factor in the success of projects. Steve has regional responsibility for the Middle East and Latin America and Europe, and his role involves early engagement with sponsors, buyers, borrowers, and bankers on project opportunities, and suppliers and trade bodies in the UK, and specific project leads. He has significant previous experience in country risk, and he's here with us today. So Steve, you're very welcome. Please go ahead. The stage is yours.
Okay, that's great, Luis. Thank you very much indeed. I promise I won't hold people back too much from whatever it is. I think it's probably lunch, but and I promise to keep the slides that I've got to a minimum and not talk to them too much, because I just want to really give a picture, a basic and simple picture of what UKF can do in this area and in general, and to explain who we are and where we fit. So that's great. I am Steve Carlsley. I work for the business development team at UKEF, working in London. And if we go to the next slide. Yeah, just very quickly, really. I mean, we have been around a heck of a long time. So 1919 was the year, so ages and ages ago, doing what we do. I don't think we're as well known then as we probably have become in the last few years with the various reasons. We're considered to be fairly flexible and innovative. We have a very good mandate with the UK government, and we have covered in the last year a record amount in terms of business for benefiting the UK. 12.3 billion is quite a big number, and we hope to continue that sort of size. So next slide. Okay, very, very briefly, I won't dwell on the wording on this too much. What we do, I think the mission is a very clear one so that everybody at least knows to ensure that no viable UK export fails for a lack of finance or insurance from the private sector and not costing UK people any money. The big word there is viable, so we won't get stuck into something that is really looking very difficult. It has to be something that is going to work, so viable is a key word. And we help UK exporters win contracts, we hope, to fulfill the orders once they've got them, and also to ensure them getting paid at the end of their project or during it. And we've covered quite a few numbers. 50 billion is our limit. I'm sure that's going to go up, and we spent quite a lot of that. So next slide would be great. This is just a key slide in terms of trying to understand what we do. Viable projects, etc. We provide guarantees. We do not provide grants. We don't get stuck into subsidies. So that's a very key thing. There are elements of government that do that. So we are charging a premium. We don't dive in when a bank is happy to take the risk. We generally will step back in that particular position. And of course, we cover a lot of stuff across the sectors. Our main aim, though, is to get as much UK content in the projects that we provide support for. And 20% is our minimum. So anything less than that, and we're not interested. Okay, next slide. On the subject matter, clearly the UK government have made it very clear, and our policies and our offer has changed and adapted quite a bit in the last 18 months or so to look at clean growth, renewables, the green bond principles, etc. And so we have particularly looked at how we adapt, and we bring in various people and reorganize our underwriting teams to take this point on board. Already we've covered some deals in this sector, this area, up to 400 million nearly. And we are looking very much at sort of how we get further into green finance, etc., and ready to do that. The government's very keen and has allocated us a specific lending pot of 2 billion, and that's what we call our direct lending facility for clean growth projects, which is excellent. Okay, next slide. This is just a general slide that says we cover all the sectors. Our long-term financing is about a guarantee to a bank, so very important that we have a bank on board. We provide that guarantee to the bank, and they're quite pleased, and it's quite considered to be quite a good perk, 100% guarantee to the bank. That is a UK government guarantee, so UK risk, which means they can lend money to overseas buyers for us. And I think the red here is basically saying very recently the OECD has agreed that we could, for a sovereign deal, provide up to, we were at 85% of the contract value, up to 95%, which is really good. And for Brazil in particular, we have appetite across the world, but for Brazil in particular, we have a pretty large appetite of 3 to 4 billion sterling. So next slide would be great. If there's one slide you take away, I'm not going to go into this in detail. If you look at it, it's split into two, and that's really what this is describing. To understand UK export finance is to understand that we do provide facilities and finance for the UK companies to help them expand, to help them get more capital, to help them get paid with insurance. More importantly, probably, we provide support for overseas buyers who are interested in looking at the UK to supply whatever it is for their contracts. and big projects. So I think that's something that you need to think about in terms of just understanding. If you do that, that's great. That's a split offer and guarantees for the overseas buyers via banks. Okay, next slide would be good. This again, I can whiz through this fairly quickly in the sense that it's just basically saying overall we think this is what is offered in terms of our deals to overseas buyers. We can do loans via the bank in local currencies, long terms of payment, the 100% unconditional guarantee I mentioned, and also the 20% UK content is considered to be fairly flexible. Okay, next slide. And when we talk about UK content, it does cover quite a lot of stuff, as in relation to, it's not just goods, it's goods and services. So skills in relation to sort of architects, consultants, designers can all be counted as UK content. And also intangibles, intellectual property, the various aspects can also be included in the UK content. Provided there is a return to the UK, then, and we can see that, then that's what we would describe as UK content. And also we can work with foreign contractors. So if there is a deal in, say, Brazil with a buyer, and there is another contract with another country, we can consider providing the support there where there is a UK supply chain in that contract, which is over 20%. Okay, next slide up. Well, of course, we're going to charge. That's why Treasury in the UK find us quite attractive, in the sense that all the deals that we support, there is a charge. There is a premium. It's related to the risk. I can't give you the amounts. It's a percentage of the country risk, how long the tenor is, but there is a charge. It's a one-off charge, so it's not paid for over the period of the loan. It's paid up front, and it can be added to the loan. Okay, next slide. This is very general again. You know, we have support for most countries in the world to varying degrees, depending on the risk, depending on how they've come out of debt problems in the past. And we do very much calculate a market appetite for those countries. So there's not many where there's no cover available, but there may be some restrictions on some of them. A lot have a lot of cover available. So that's really encouraging, I think. Okay, next slide. That's just a pictorial view of where we've got the amounts available. It's probably not so clear to see on the screen, but maybe it's just giving a variation in terms of the amount of cover available in different parts of the world. But I think it's clear that we are, generally speaking, on cover. Just depends, it might be a little bit more stricter in some places than others. Okay, next slide. And a very new policy for us, and something that has become extremely worthwhile, particularly emphasized during the pandemic. We've started to recruit. We've got the big thumbs up to recruit more. I think we started with 5. We've now got 15, and we're looking to get 25 to 30 in the next year. These individuals have usually really good banking experience and background. They are based in the embassies around the world. And if there's any help needed in terms of unlocking particular issues, or more importantly, they're getting new deals on the table for us in terms of introducing the right parties to each other and talking through us. It has been a strategy that has paid off. During the pandemic, we had somebody to aim at in terms of asking questions about how things were happening and what the risks were and what the issues were in each of the countries involved. So fantastic, relatively new initiative for UK export finance. So very pleased to pick that one out. Okay, next slide. I'm not going to go through these, other than they are 6 clean growth type deals that we've been involved in. One in Mexico, one in the UAE, and Egypt was considered to be clean growth. It's a metro for Cairo, and a wind farm, solar, and hospital infrastructure where we provided support. So we're happy, and we really want to increase our portfolio, if you like, but these are definite examples of deals that we have done in the past few years, and some quite recently, and we have an awful lot now looking like they're going to be in our pipeline. So really pleased to be able to talk to anybody who's interested in talking about projects wherever they may be, and picking up our own finance offer and working through it with you. So I think it ends that with that. I think the last slide is a big thank you. I hope I haven't whizzed too too quickly. It really was just about giving you a basic idea of what UK Export Finance can do. And apologies if it went over ground that you already know, but really pleased to be invited to be here. And thank you very much indeed.
No, we thank you. It was very good and a very clear presentation. Thank you very much, Steve. We have some questions for you, but Steve, I know as a fact that one of the largest private banks in Brazil has a goal of completely decarbonizing its portfolio by 2050, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
For that, companies will need to modernize if they are to remain on the financial markets radar. A lot of investment will be needed. No room for greenwashing, I think. So I have for you, Steve, the most expected question of the day: how British and Brazilian companies can cooperate with the help of their governments, of course, towards cleaner shipping. And how and will COP26 serve as a catalyst for these initiatives? Can we trust the future, Steve? Will our children live in a better world?
Well, I think if you can gauge it by the sort of change in our focus, I mean, obviously we need to do that anyway as a country, as a world. But I mean, in terms of UK specific change in focus, I mean, I would say that, wouldn't I? We have moved very, very closely towards what's going on and try to understand it and try and have experts in place to look at all the different types of deals and help where we can get to understand the projects individually. So if the amount of interest, the amount of different sets of people that have come to us in the last 6 months or so is anything to gauge the sort of effort and the intent, then it's very, very high. I do think that we are ready to look at any deals which have that sort of focus in mind. So that's a very general answer, but it is, I don't think anybody knows the answer themselves, other than I think there has been significant change in attitude and view from governments and how companies are going to look. If we take the Middle East, for instance, it's a sort of area you automatically associate with oil and gas. We've had so many inquiries now from that region who are looking at all sorts of renewable deals. So it's very encouraging, I think, is the best way to say it, and certainly would be ready to look at anything in relation to how we would structure or how we would finance that sort of deal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it's good to hear that. So, well, thank you very much, Steve, for your participation. It was very good indeed.
That's okay.
And we are now coming to the end of our event. We'd like to thank all the participants, the audience, the speakers, and I hope you learned and exchanged as much as I did this morning here in Brazil, afternoon in the UK, or early morning in Vancouver. Once again, congratulations to DIT for the excellent webinar. And DIT and I wish you a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.